All right, so you guys have sent us a ton of stuff about this Batman, Caped Crusader, articles, reviews, you name it. And let me tell you, this ain't your typical Saturday morning cartoon.
No, not at all. This is different.
This deep dive, we're going full noir, right back to Batman's roots. We're talking trench coats, fedoras.
Yeah, that whole vibe.
Gotham City, where the rain just washes away those lines between, like, good and evil, you know?
It's a really cool departure from, I think, some of the brighter, more, family-friendly Batman animations that we've been seeing. They're really taking us back to the 1940s with this one, tapping into those early Detective Comics.
Yeah, and one of the reviews you sent, they said watching this show, it's like seeing early Detective Comics just collide with the Batman from 2022.
Oh, wow, yeah.
What do you think about that?
I think that is spot on. I mean, it really embraces that raw noir aesthetic, but then it brings in these, like, modern cinematic touches, and it makes for a really rich, atmospheric viewing experience. And the visuals, oh man, what a love letter to Batman's history,
Absolutely. I mean, seeing that original 1939 Batsuit, design the shorter cape, those pointy ears, it just screams classic Batman, but then it's got this dark, stylized twist on it,
Exactly.
And speaking of style, we got to talk about the animation style, because that sparked some debate in the articles. Some people are calling it, like, unique and visually stunning. Others are saying it feels kind of stiff, outdated. What's your take on that?
Yeah, stiff definitely came up in a few of the reviews you sent. And honestly, I think it's a really deliberate stylistic choice. By using kind of more limited animation, especially in the character movements, it just enhances this sense of unease, of unpredictability, I think. It's almost like you're watching a comic book come to life, but with this kind of haunting, almost dreamlike quality to it.
Yeah, and that leans into that whole noir thing we were talking about.
For sure.
Those shadows playing tricks on your eyes, characters lurking just out of sight. It adds this whole other layer of, like, mystery and suspense. Yeah.
Exactly. It's constantly playing with your perceptions, keeps you guessing. And speaking of playing with perceptions, this show, it does not hold back when it comes to exploring those darker, more mature themes, things we haven't really seen explored in quite this way in a Batman, I think. Police corruption, social inequality. We even see the psychological toll that vigilantism takes.
Yeah.
It's not your lighthearted superhero cartoon, that's for sure.
It's definitely not your average superhero fare. And that's one of the things that makes this deep dive so interesting, right? Like, we're not just looking at cool visuals and fight scenes. We're actually talking about, like, the implications of those actions.
Yep.
We're going into these moral gray areas that Batman often finds himself in.
Oh, yeah. He's always straddling that line.
And that's where this show shines. Like, in those morally ambiguous spaces, that's Caped Crusader, right? Where the line between hero and vigilante gets all blurred.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they're not afraid to ask the tough questions. Like, what happens when the people who are supposed to protect the city, the police, what happens when they're the ones who are actually corrupt?
Yeah.
We see that play out in this show in such a cool way with Bullock and Flass.
Oh, man, those two.
Talk about corrupt cops, right?
The most corrupt. But it really makes you think, though, like, in a world where you can't even trust the police, who can you trust?
Right.
And where does that leave Batman?
Yeah, because he operates outside the law anyway. So it's like, where does he fit into all of this?
Exactly. And it's interesting because you have Jim Gordon, who's like this beacon of integrity in the sea of corruption.
He's trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, he's trying so hard, and you really feel for him.
But it's tough.
Yeah.
Because he's wrestling with the ethics of Batman's methods, but he's also trying to uphold the law at the same time.
It's tough, man.
And it adds just this whole other layer of complexity to the story,
It's that classic noir trope, right? That one good cop in a city drowning in its own, like, darkness.
Oh, it's a classic for a reason. But you know what I find really interesting is how Caped Crusader takes these classic noir elements, but then it also finds ways to subvert them, which is really cool. Like with the Rogues Gallery, for instance.
Yeah.
We're seeing some really inspired reinterpretations of these iconic Batman villains.
And that's what one of the articles talked about. It said that Caped Crusader is like a masterclass in character reimagining.
Oh, 100%.
They're not wrong.
Not at all. Take Oswald Cobblepot, for example. Or should we say Oswalda Cobblepot.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the decision to make Penguin a woman is bold, and it really works. And it's not just about, like, a gender swap for shock value. It adds this whole new dimension to the power dynamics of Gotham.
It's not just like slapping a different outfit on a familiar character.
No.
They're really digging into the psychology of these villains and exploring them in ways we haven't seen before.
Exactly. And Oswalda, she's not just some ruthless crime lord.
No.
She's a woman who has had to fight like hell to get to the top in this patriarchal society.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you feel that weight, of everything she's up against in all her interactions. It makes her, I think, a far more compelling and intimidating villain than, we've ever seen before.
Oh, absolutely. And speaking of these reimagined villains, we have to talk about Selina Kyle because she's not just Catwoman in this. She's a fallen socialite, which is so interesting, especially when you think about Bruce Wayne and his whole double life.
It's brilliant. Right. You have these two characters, both operating in the shadows, both driven by this, sense of loss, this desire for something more. I am so curious to see how their relationship develops as the series goes on, especially because it seems like they're going for a much more complex dynamic than I think we've seen in other adaptations.
I'm already hooked just from the first season. And that's the beauty of the show, right? It gives us these familiar characters, but then it adds all these twists and turns. And Clayface. Don't even get me started on Clayface.
Oh, yeah. He's another one who's gotten a really interesting makeover. Basil Carlo, the man behind the mask.
Yeah.
He's almost like this tragic figure in Caped Crusader, which I kind of love.
Yeah.
They took this kind of disgruntled special effects artist and transformed him into this struggling actor who's obsessed with his looks. And he's willing to do whatever it takes to go to these desperate lengths for fame. It's a cautionary tale.
Talk about method acting gone wrong.
Oh, tell me about it. But it's that depth, that complexity that makes Caped Crusader stand out, I think, from your average superhero cartoon.
And speaking of digging deeper, this show isn't afraid to mess with the origin stories either, are they?
No, they go there.
Which I love. Thank goodness they didn't make us sit through another rehash of the Wayne murder.
Right. We get it.
Like we know.
It happened. We don't need to see it again. And I think it really speaks to the show's confidence that it trusts the audience enough to know that without explicitly showing it to us again.
Exactly. And you still feel the weight of that event.
Oh, absolutely.
In everything that Bruce does, every choice that he makes, you can tell.
It's like those wounds are still fresh. Like they're still shaping him, molding him into the Batman that he's going to become.
Yeah. And speaking of shaping Bruce Wayne, this brings us to probably the biggest surprise for me.
Yeah.
His therapist is Dr. Harleen Quinzel.
I know. Can you believe it?
When I tell you, my jaw dropped.
It's such a brilliant move by the creators.
It's so good.
Because we know her fate, right?
Yeah.
We know where she ends up. So to see her in these therapy sessions with Bruce, before the mask, before Joker, it's like...
It makes you question everything. It's like, oh, is she manipulating him? Is this part of her plan? What's going on?
It's the ultimate origin story twist, in my opinion.
I know. It really does. Like a ticking time bomb just waiting to go off. And to see those interactions, in those early stages, it just adds this whole other level to it.
Yeah. It subverts your expectations. And speaking of subverting expectations, we got to talk about the whole Bruce and Alfred dynamic in this.
Yes.
Because it is different.
It's a lot more formal, I guess.
Yeah.
There's definitely some distance there.
For sure.
And one of the articles pointed out how Bruce insists on calling Alfred Pennyworth.
Oh, interesting.
Which I thought was so telling. There's this wall there.
It's true. And it's not even that he's trying to be rude or disrespectful or anything. It's just,
no.
There's this coldness, you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
But at the same time, you still sense that bond.
Oh, it's there.
Deep down.
Deep down.
They have this connection.
It's like he's holding him at arm's length almost, to protect him.
Right.
Don't get too close.
Exactly. And I think that makes it even more interesting to watch. Because that affection is there. It's just buried under all this trauma.
Yes. And that's what I love about this show, They don't shy away from that stuff. They lean into that emotional complexity.
Absolutely. And I think it's something we haven't really seen a lot of in other Batman adaptations. Yeah. Especially when it comes to their relationship. It would have been so easy to just kind of fall back on those tropes, but they do something different. And it's not just them either, right? Mm-hmm. This whole exploration of identity, of the masks we wear, it extends to pretty much every character in this show. It's like Gotham itself is breeding this kind of duality.
It's true. You've got the wealth, the glamour, but underneath it all, there's this darkness, this corruption.
Exactly.
And then you have all these characters trying to navigate that. Heroes, villains, they're all trying to figure out who they are in all of this.
And I think that's where that noir element really comes into play because it's not just about the visuals, right? Yeah. It's this underlying sense of moral ambiguity.
Oh, for sure. It's like that classic noir line, everybody has a secret.
Yes.
Nobody's innocent.
Exactly. And that's Gotham City in a nutshell.
Right.
Right? And Caped Crusader really leans into that.
Yeah.
But it also isn't afraid to kind of throw in these curveballs, too. I'm thinking about some of the more supernatural elements.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Like Gentleman Ghost?
Yes. Gentleman Ghost. Who would have thought?
I know. He's not exactly your typical bad guy.
He's something else.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, right? Because they take these fantastical elements, but they still manage to make it work within this grounded world that they've created. And it's not just him either. We got to talk about Nocturna.
Natalia Knight.
Oh, she is terrifying.
Creepy, creepy villain.
Yeah, preying on orphans, stealing their life force. Like, it's dark, man.
It's dark.
But it works.
It works. It's like classic horror, but then you filter it through the show's already like gothic lens and it becomes something.
Totally. And it makes you wonder, like, how far are they willing to go with this? You know?
Where else can they take it?
Because we're only one season in.
Yeah.
And they've already blown our minds a few times.
Right. Who else are they going to bring in from, like, Batman's Rogues Gallery?
Who knows what other surprises they have in store.
I know.
But that season finale, talk about a cliffhanger.
Oh, my God, yeah.
That shot of that figure testing out that laughing toxin.
Chills. Literal chills.
It's coming. He's coming.
Yeah, we know. They're not even trying to hide it.
But it's effective.
Yeah.
And it leaves you wanting more, which is...
Oh, 100%.
good thing, you know, for the show.
It's a good thing. But you know what else I thought was interesting? Because one of the reviews you sent, they talked about how even with all the darkness, the intrigue and everything, Caped Crusader doesn't lose sight of hope.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Which I think is really important. What did you think about that?
I completely agree. Like, even when things are at their bleakest, you still have characters like Jim Gordon, even young Barbara.
Yeah.
They represent that glimmer of light, you know?
Yeah.
They remind us that there's still good in Gotham. That it's always worth fighting for.
And that's a powerful message, especially in a world like today, where things can feel so dark sometimes. It's that reminder that, you know, things can get better.
Yeah. And ultimately, that's what Batman is all about, right? This idea that one person, even when they're surrounded by darkness, can make a difference.
And it makes you think, right?
Yeah.
Because throughout this whole deep dive, we've been talking about how this show plays with our idea of identity.
Right from the beginning.
You've got Bruce Wayne, he puts on a mask and becomes, well, Batman, right?
Exactly.
But then you have all these villains and they're hiding behind this like facade of normal life.
Yeah, hiding in plain sight.
So it makes you wonder, in a city like Gotham, where it feels like everyone's hiding something, can you ever really know anyone?
It's a question we keep coming back to, and it doesn't seem like there are any easy answers.
Not at all. But I think that's what makes this show so compelling.
Totally.
Keeps you guessing.
For sure.
Well, on that note, I think we should probably wrap things up.
Yeah, I think we've covered a lot of ground here.
We've explored the themes, we've analyzed the characters.
No, dove deep.
We did. This was a deep dive.
That's what we do.
Exactly. And Batman, Caped Crusader, it definitely gives you a lot to think about.
Oh, absolutely.
So to all our listeners out there, thanks for joining us on this journey into the shadows of Gotham City. This has been The Deep Dive.
Until next time.